Hello, welcome to the History of Aviation. My name is James Pope, and my friend here is
Vic Solman.
Vic Solman. Between us, we're going to co-host this program. We've been enjoying ourselves so much, I just want you to keep on going. Now, the plane behind us is a Royal Canadian Air Force plane, but Victor will tell you all about it because I only know how to fly them. Go away. On you go.
Okay, this was the advanced trainer used throughout World War II for training the pilots after they'd had their initial pilot training on a much simpler aircraft. This was the aircraft that came to be known as the Harvard. And it was an essentially all-metal, single-engine training aircraft with two complete sets of controls so that an instructor and a pilot could fly it alternately as a part of the training program. It was a very solid design because it had to take a lot of less than perfect landings. It had to stand up to a lot of abuse from students that were just learning to fly, and it had to be easy to service and easy to keep flying. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been of any use in the training program. It was used all the way across Canada in the Commonwealth Flying Training Program so that it was familiar to Canadians literally coast to coast. The engine, when it was set at high revolutions per minute and with the propeller in fine pitch, as it was in certain maneuvers, had a particular snarl to it, and the propeller made a particular rattling noise, so everybody in the country eventually came to know the aircraft just by sound. You didn't even have to look up to know when a Harvard went by.
We came to hate it.
That's right. If you were in an area where you were close to a training field and you had dozens of these aircraft in the sky hour after hour, you wished they didn't make some of the peculiar noises they did.
That's right. Now tell me a few things about this. The actual engine, first of all.
Well, the engine is a Pratt & Whitney, one of the WASP series of engines. It's a 9-cylinder air-cooled radial in the order of 450 horsepower, that sort of thing. Some of the aircraft had two-bladed propellers, as you see there, metal blades with variable pitch so that you could adapt the propeller pitch to an engine speed that you wanted for a certain maneuver. The aircraft was fully aerobatic. It could loop the loop and do all of the other standard maneuvers that you might expect.
That was for fighter pilot.
For a fighter aircraft, yeah. This was the trainer on which the people learned the fine points before they moved on to things like Spitfires and Hurricanes and Tomahawks and all the rest of the high-performance aircraft. This was a good transition airplane. It was fairly easy to fly, but not so easy that you took it for granted. It had a few characteristics that you had to watch very carefully. It had stall characteristics that could get you into a lot of trouble if you allowed it to. Yeah. But all of those things were part of the training package. You had to learn to fly this aircraft well before you went on to other aircraft which had other peculiarities and were very much more powerful and much faster. So you learned on a relatively slow speed but tricky airplane to do all the necessary maneuvers for dogfights and the other activities that fighter aircraft carried out. Now this aircraft had all the conventional components. It had a thick wing for high lift for fairly rapid takeoff. It had big flaps under the trailing edge here that came down to slow it down for landing. It had big ailerons for lateral stability. These, incidentally, were fabric covered. The rest of the aircraft is metal. The tail surfaces were the same way. The fixed parts were metal. The movable parts were partly fabric covered.
Can you explain what?
Oh, that's a trim tab.
A trim tab. Okay.
Yeah, if you were setting the aircraft to fly in a given configuration, you could either apply pressure to the controls if the aircraft was tending to be a little low on one side or a little high and correct it that way, or you could move a wheel which manipulated by cables this little panel here, and you could set that so that it held the aileron in the proper position that you wanted. Now you had a similar set of controls on the rudder, the vertical stabilizer. You notice there's a little trim panel in it.
Yes.
And on the horizontal stabilizer, the tail surface, the flat surface, at the back end, there's another little trim panel.
Yeah.
You could adjust these very minutely to control exactly the attitude of the aircraft. Again, you're looking at the same kind of game that you would do on a much higher performance fighter aircraft.
Would that be radar there?
That would be a radio aerial for communication, and in the little black bump, I would expect the antenna for your radio direction finder. Not radar at this point, not on aircraft, not in a training aircraft. Now you notice the couple of interesting things about the so-called greenhouse. You've got a pilot's position in the front, and another one in the back, and the canopies can be slid either way to open those. But a very important part is this structure in the center, which goes up. It's a very strongly braced metal set of pipes with a solid block of metal at the top. That's a crash bar. When you roll the aircraft over, you're strapped in your seat. You may be hanging upside down. That takes the shock, so the roof doesn't come in on you.
I got you. I got you.
That keeps you from using your head to hold the airplane up. And I watched one of these go over one time, and the chap came out, and he wasn't hurt, but the aircraft had gone right over on its back.
Along with hundreds of recorded interviews, our group has been involved with the recovery of submerged aircraft from Norway, Belgium, Malta, England, and the Baltic Sea. Our Zoom show, airplanehunters.org, details these aircraft recoveries as we honor our veterans.
Hi everybody, Carl Casgard reporting to you from Bomber Command Museum of Canada in Nanton, Alberta, and along with my colleague and buddy Scott Knox at the Rebuild Shop in Arnprior, Ontario, where we're doing all the Halifax bomber restoration. Welcome. We want to give you an update, and we're going to try the split screen today, show you this little program on our great progress. We're in the last month of 2021 in December, and we've made good, steady progress